Hello and welcome. This video is intended to show you what I, Mrs. Erkenbrack, really value as a teacher. I made a draft of this video last year and thought, I've done it. This is perfect. What could possibly improve? And now going back and watching that draft, it seems so stiff and so vague, and I really have found a lot of clarity over this last year. So while a lot of things have changed, there are some things that have stayed the same. One thing that has stayed the same is my primary goal. So the thing that is still most important to me is that my students leave my classroom better than they came. Now this I've dove into a little bit further and identified the two ways that is really most important to me that they're learning and growing. So it's most important to me that they leave better than they came, both as a person and as a musician. Now, the poster that you're looking at now is one that currently hangs in my classroom that I made just this last year. So you can expect that everything from here on out for the rest of the video is geared towards these two goals: my students becoming a better person and a better musician each day. This led to me rehashing the rules and procedures for my classroom and creating one more poster. So what you're seeing now is just a poster of what I value, so it's clear to my students that I value above all else human decency in the way that they treat one another. I value creating powerful music, and I value learning by doing, all of which we'll dive into a little more deeply here in a minute. And these are the new rules prioritized in my classroom. First, we speak kindly to and of each other. Second, we leave better musician each day. Third, they're in ready position at the signal, which is really just help manage the chaos of a music classroom. Fourth, if it's not yours, you don't touch it. With that, let's talk a little bit more about what my core values of human decency, creating powerful music, and learning by doing really look like in my classroom. Human decency. I obviously have always known that I want my students to treat each other well in my classroom, and I want my room to be a safe place, but I wasn't really sure how to make that happen, but now I finally have some ideas. Something that did stay the same with this from my last draft was the open door policy. I do still have an open door policy in my classroom, meaning any student can come to me with anything at any time. And it's been really cool to see this last year how I've had students come and use that even who weren't my students because they were concerned about a friend that had started cutting themselves or that they worried was suicidal. Or I had one girl that started coming in with her sister when she came to get her instrument after school. But then she started coming in even on the days that her sister wasn't even at school, just to tell me what she was excited about that had happened that day. So I do think that that's still something I want to have in my classroom. The other aspect is I really, really want my students to know how much I prioritize how they treat each other. As I watched videos of me teaching last year, I felt like I talked a lot about how we need to treat each other right, but I didn't actually do anything about it when students weren't interacting kindly. So I switched that to my number one rule: speaking kindly to each other and speaking kindly of each other. So here's what I plan to have happen now. So I want zero tolerance for unkindness in my classroom. And what this would look like is as soon as I see something going on during class, rather than waiting to address it with the student after class or the next day, as I often would, thinking I needed to calm down first, I would stop right then, give the class something to practice, and go and pull that student aside and have a clear conversation about what happened, why they were doing what they were doing, and make it clear to them that whatever was happening is not something that's okay to happen in my classroom, and make kind of a plan with them to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then after class, if they were walking out, I'd pull them aside again, just follow up like, hey, Is everything clear on what we talked about earlier? Do you think you'll have any issues with this in the future? And then at the beginning of class the next day, before we really got started, after our tuning, I would address the large group really quickly with something just like, hey, there's a few things I saw going on yesterday that I wasn't okay with, and talk with them about it. And then after the second issue with the same student being unkind, I would contact parents. Like, it's just something that I need to nip in the bud right away, so that if anyone sees something happening, they can see that I'm reacting immediately to it and know that it's not something that I'm going to let slide. So human decency is number one. We're humans first and musicians second. That being said, we are musicians. It is important to me that we're able to create powerful music and that my students are actually learning advanced techniques. So one way I'm going about that, I always want to make sure their music is challenging. Not something that they can sight read, but something that they're going to need to put work in. Something that, like I mentioned, uses advanced techniques, new things that they can be learning each day. It's going to take actual work from my students with each other and on their own to be able to create that music. And one of the big things I've realized is important to me after last year is that my students come with the willingness to actually try and become better musicians for themselves and for their ensemble. I had a lot of students that would just not get their instruments out. And it was really, really hard and really unfair for the rest of the class when they wouldn't play. And then they show up at the concert expecting to play and just kind of mess up the whole song that everyone else has spent months rehearsing. So that willingness is huge. On top of that, I want my students to actually connect with the music. I want them to recognize how music can be a form of expression and how they can really tell a story through this skill that they're learning. And I want the audience to be able to experience that connection as well. So yes, creating powerful music, hugely important. Now let's talk a little bit more about learning by doing. This is more so the way I teach, not just the way I run my classroom. So a lot of how I teach relates back to David Kolb's experiential learning theory. Now there are 4 phases included in this theory: concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. Meaning, when I teach, they usually do the music first, so to speak, and then reflect on what just happened, sort of put words to it, pair together and see what they can create with it, which dips into that abstract conceptualization, is what can I do with these things that I'm learning and have just experienced and created. And then active experimentation. They test those conceptualizations. They try to create with what they've just theorized. And then that's a cycle that continues throughout my class. And I really, really love it because I feel like my students learn so much more by like observing, experiencing it themselves, and then being able to reflect on it on their own and then with their classmates, and then really see how it applies to the creation process and apply it. With that in mind, I've also changed from my last working values draft how I do assessment. So, of course, there's informal assessments going on constantly in a music classroom, but formally, I no longer just assess through multiple options. Meaning, I don't just say, oh, you have to play this passage, but you can play it through a recording or in person or whatever it might be. Or you need to demonstrate this skill, but you pick the passage. It's not just about choosing what they play, but they still have to play. It's more assessment through creation. So students write, they compose, they reflect, they improvise. They do things like that to show off their skills and actually, learn them instead of just being able to regurgitate or demonstrate them in the moment. So that's a lot of what I mean when I say assessment through creation and when I say we learn by doing. So bringing it all back, what do I value as a teacher? First and foremost, human decency, and then creating powerful music, becoming powerful musicians, then learning by doing. And again, these go back to my two main goals for my students, that they leave better than they came each day, both as a person and as a musician. Thank you.